Captain Zexal's fingers trembled slightly as he studied the holographic display. The readout couldn't be correct. His outpost, stationed at the very edge of Zaharian space, had never registered anything like this before. "Confirm these readings," he ordered, his voice carrying the distinct metallic resonance common to his species. The sensor officer, a junior-ranked Zaharian with scales that had not yet fully hardened into the characteristic bronze hue of adulthood, worked frantically at his console. He confirmed, "Captain, 217 vessels approaching from Sector 9. Size classifications range from corvette to super dreadnought. Formation suggests military precision." Zexal felt his throat membranes constrict. The Zaharian Empire, dominant force in this quadrant for over 15,000 cycles, had never encountered such a large organized fleet outside their own armadas. Who would dare? "Magnification," he commanded. The hologram zoomed in on the lead vessels. Zexal's compound eyes widened, the facets catching the light from the display in a rainbow of confusion. "Those designs, they're not uniform." His voice carried disbelief. "Some appear to be. Are those mining vessels? Transport ships?" "Sir, energy readings are inconsistent with known military configurations," the science officer reported. "But they're definitely armed. We're detecting weapon signatures, though they're unusual." Zexal's mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a sign of deep agitation among his kind. "Alert Imperial Command. Priority Crimson. Unknown Armada approaching Zaharian space. Request immediate reinforcements." As the communication officer scrambled to execute the order, Zexal continued to stare at the approaching fleet. Something about this situation felt fundamentally wrong. The Empire had cataloged every spacefaring race within 50 parsecs. None possessed the industrial capacity to field such a force. His gaze fixed on what appeared to be the command vessel larger than the others, its hull bearing strange markings he couldn't decipher. The translator algorithms were still processing the alien script. "UES Liberty," the computer finally announced. "Translation confidence, 94.8%. Zexal didn't recognize the designation, but soon enough, the entire Zaharian Empire would know that name. "Mbulum." Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, formerly the Earth's largest passenger cruise liner, now the flagship of humanity's last hope. Through the viewport stretched the vast fleet of the Exodus mission, every space-worthy vessel humanity could muster, retrofitted, armed, and filled with the remnants of Earth's population. "Fleet status?" Murphy asked, his weathered face revealing none of the anxiety that had become his constant companion since accepting command. "All ships accounted for." "Captain," replied his XO, Commander Lisa Bennett. "The Galileo had some trouble with their engine conversion, but they've caught up now. 223 vessels, all maintaining formation." Murphy nodded, allowing himself a moment of pride. 6 months ago, he'd been a commercial freight captain, hauling ore from the asteroid belt to Earth's orbital refineries. Now he commanded the largest fleet in human history, though fleet was perhaps too generous a term for the hodgepodge of vessels that made up humanity's exodus from their dying world. "Any sign of activity ahead?" he asked. "We've detected what appears to be a monitoring station," reported Amy Rodriguez, the fleet's intelligence officer, a former corporate security specialist. She'd proven herself indispensable in coordinating the exodus. "Design consistent with previous observations of Zaharian technology. They've likely spotted us by now." Murphy stroked his salt and pepper beard, a habit from his merchant navy days that had intensified with the weight of command. "Then we proceed as planned. Commence Operation Scattered Light. Have mining ships Delta through Kappa deploy their drone swarms." The order cascaded through the fleet's quantum communication network, Another miracle of human adaptation. 6 months ago, quantum entanglement had been theoretical. Now it was the backbone of humanity's improvised military communications. And raise President Carter, Murphy added. She should know we've made first contact. Minutes later, the stern face of President Helen Carter appeared on the main screen. Like everyone else in humanity's remaining government, she had aged decades in the past year. Captain Murphy, she acknowledged, her voice steady despite the dark circles under her eyes. I understand we've reached the frontier. Yes, Madam President. We've detected a Zaharian outpost. They've almost certainly spotted us. The President nodded grimly. Then we've officially entered the most dangerous phase of Operation Exodus. The Security Council has reviewed your proposed approach and General Brooks concurs. You have full authority to proceed as you see fit. Captain, the fate of our species rests in your hands. Murphy felt the weight of those words settle onto his shoulders like physical mass. He'd never sought this responsibility. No sane person would, but here it was nonetheless. We'll find our new home, Madam President, one way or another. As the communication ended, Murphy turned back to the viewport. Somewhere ahead lay their destination, Sanctuary Prime, a habitable world that might become humanity's salvation. Between them and that hope stood the Zaharian Empire, a civilization thousands of years more advanced than humanity, with military might to match. Murphy had no illusions about humanity's chances in a direct confrontation. Their only hope lay in deception, innovation, and the relentless human drive to survive against impossible odds. Deploy the first wave of decoys, he ordered. Let's see how the Zaharians react to a ghost fleet. Inamam Saba. The Grand Council chamber of the Zaharian Empire was rarely convened on such short notice. Located at the heart of the Imperial core world, the vast circular hall now hosted the 12 Grand Councilors, each representing one of the founding systems of the Empire. At the center stood Admiral Chryson, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet, his carapace bearing the distinctive golden striations that marked his royal bloodline. The evidence is conclusive, Kreekan stated, his translator converting his natural clicks and whistles into the standard Imperial language. A massive armada has entered the outer territories. Initial estimates suggest over 200 capital ships, with support vessels that would triple that number. The Grand Councilor of Zaharia Prime, eldest and most senior of the 12, leaned forward on her ornate perch. No known civilization within our sphere of influence possesses such military capacity, she stated. Who dares challenge the Empire so boldly? Admiral Chryson activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. A three-dimensional representation of the intruding fleet appeared, rotating slowly. That is the most perplexing aspect. Exalted One. Our analysts cannot identify a known origin. The ships bear markings we've never encountered before. More concerning, they do not conform to standard military design parameters. Another counselor, his exoskeleton bearing the deep azure hue of the water worlds, chittered in disbelief. You're suggesting an unknown spacefaring civilization has suddenly appeared at our borders? Impossible. Our survey vessels have mapped all habitable systems within 1,000 light years. Admiral Chryson's mandibles clicked in what those who knew him recognized as frustration. Nevertheless, they are there, and they continue to advance toward the inner territories. What of their capabilities? Asked the military counselor, her voice carrying the distinctive resonance of a veteran warrior caste. Uncertain, Chryson admitted. Long-range scans detect energy signatures inconsistent with any known weapons technology. Some vessels appear to be retrofitted civilian craft. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the chamber. Retrofitted? You mean these are not purpose-built warships? The economic counselor's antennae twitched in confusion. Many are not, which contradicts all known military doctrine. Yet they move with coordinated precision that suggests military training. The Grand Counselor raised a clawed appendage, silencing the growing debate. Admiral Chryson, what is your assessment of this threat? Chryson's compound eyes seemed to darken. Exalted One, in my 500 cycles of service, I have never encountered anything like this. The unknown fleet's composition defies strategic analysis. However, its size alone represents a potential existential threat to the Empire. I recommend immediate mobilization of the home fleet and deployment of the 1st through 5th battle groups to intercept. The Grand Counselor considered this for a moment, her ancient eyes unreadable. So be it. The Empire has stood for 15 millennia. It will not falter now before some unknown barbarians. Deploy the fleet, Admiral. Discover who these intruders are, what they want, and if necessary, eliminate them to the last vessel. Admiral Chryson bowed, his exoskeleton creaking slightly with the motion. As the Empire commands. As he left the chamber, Kraken's mind raced with questions. In all his centuries of service, he had developed an instinct for danger. Something about this situation felt wrong, not just unexpected, but fundamentally inconsistent with all known patterns of interstellar conflict. Who were these newcomers? And why would they approach the mightiest empire in the galaxy with such an ill-matched collection of vessels? Either they were fools, or they knew something the Zaharians did not. On the bridge of the UES Liberty, Captain Murphy watched as the fleet executed its first defensive maneuver. The initial Zaharian response had been predictable, a squadron of patrol vessels dispatched from the frontier station to intercept and identify the approaching human ships. Rodriguez, status of the drone swarm? Murphy asked. Deployed and operational, Captain. The intelligence officer replied. 8,000 units distributed among the forward mining vessels. Electromagnetic and radiation signatures calibrated to mimic capital ships at distance. Murphy nodded in approval. The drone swarm had been Lisa Bennett's innovation, thousands of small, unmanned craft salvaged from Earth's automated mining operations, reprogrammed to broadcast false sensor readings. At a distance, they would appear to be additional warships, multiplying the apparent size of the human fleet. Maintain course and speed, Murphy ordered. Let's see if they take the bait. The Zaharian patrol approached cautiously, maintaining what they clearly considered a safe distance from the massive human Armada. Long-range scans probed the human fleet, attempting to discern its composition and capabilities. They're scanning us, Bennett reported, monitoring the sensor readouts. Pretty sophisticated technology, multiphasic, quantum tunneling. They're trying to get a detailed picture. Are the countermeasures holding? Murphy asked. Bennett allowed herself a small smile. So far, the quantum foam generators are creating enough background noise to obscure their detailed scans. They can see our physical structure, but not much else. Another of Bennett's innovations devices that created localized quantum uncertainty fields, making precise scanning difficult. Not perfect stealth technology, but enough to keep the Zaharians guessing about humanity's true capabilities. A captain, Rodriguez interrupted. The patrol vessels are transmitting. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. I think they're trying to establish communication. Murphy straightened his uniform, a cobbled-together affair that attempted to project military authority despite its civilian origins. He let them through on the main channel, audio only for now. The bridge speakers crackled to life, emitting a series of clicks, whistles, and electronic tones that gradually resolved into recognizable speech as the translation algorithms processed the alien language. Unidentified fleet. This is Captain Zexel of the Zaharian Imperial Border Force. You have entered sovereign Imperial territory without authorization. Identify yourselves and state your purpose immediately, or be considered hostile. You will then halt your advance and prepare for boarding and inspection." Murphy took a deep breath. This was the moment they had prepared for humanity's first official contact with the Zaharian Empire. Their response now would set the tone for everything that followed. "This is Captain Jake Murphy of the United Earthship Liberty," he replied, keeping his voice steady and authoritative. "We represent the United Earth government. We are on a peaceful journey seeking new territories for settlement. We request safe passage through your space to reach our destination." A long pause followed before the Zaharian captain responded, his translated voice carrying unmistakable skepticism. "Captain Murphy, your peaceful fleet appears to consist of over 500 warships. The Empire does not recognize any entity called United Earth. Explain this discrepancy immediately." Murphy exchanged glances with Rodriguez. The drone deception was working. The Zaharians were detecting far more ships than actually existed. "Captain Zexel, I assure you our intentions are peaceful. The size of our fleet is necessary for the safety of our colonists. We come from a distant system, which explains why the Empire has no record of Earth. We seek only safe passage." Another pause, longer this time. "Maintain your current position. Captain Murphy, do not advance further into Imperial space. Any movement will be considered hostile action. The Imperial fleet has been alerted and is en route. Further communication will await their arrival." The transmission ended abruptly. "Well," Murphy said, breaking the tense silence that followed, "I'd say that went about as expected. They're maintaining position at extreme weapons range," Rodriguez reported. 5 vessels, destroyer class by our estimation. They're calling for reinforcements." Murphy nodded. "And so it begins. Phase 1 complete, we've made contact, and they're treating us seriously without immediate hostility. Now for Phase 2, he turned to Bennett. "How are the weapons conversions coming along?" The engineer checked her tablet. "Mining lasers on the extraction vessels have been reconfigured for combat on 78% of the ships. The cargo hauler's mass drivers are ready on all vessels. Not exactly military-grade weaponry, but they'll pack a punch if needed." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Murphy replied, though his tone suggested he considered conflict inevitable. "We need to buy time. Rodriguez, prepare the diplomatic package for transmission when their main fleet arrives. Bennett, I want all ships ready for emergency maneuvers. If negotiations fail, we'll need to execute the scatter protocol immediately." As his officers acknowledged their orders, Murphy gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the might of the Zaharian Empire was mobilizing against them. Humanity's future hung by the thinnest of threads. "And someone wake up Dr. Patel," he added. "If we're going to be speaking to their leadership soon, I want our best xenolinguist on hand. We can't afford any cultural misunderstandings." The bridge crew set about their tasks with the quiet efficiency born of desperate circumstances. They had rehearsed this scenario countless times during the long journey from Earth. Now, the real test was about to begin. Dr. Zenthara, senior xenobiologist of the Imperial Science Academy, had never expected to be summoned to a military vessel. Yet here she was, aboard the Imperial dreadnought Indomitable flagship of Admiral Creason himself. Her research into primitive life forms hardly seemed relevant to the current crisis, but one did not question a summons from the Supreme Commander. "Dr. Zenthara," Admiral Creason acknowledged as she entered his private command center. "Thank you for responding so promptly." Zenthara bowed respectfully, her slender form making the gesture appear almost elegant despite the awkwardness she felt. "Admiral, I am honored. Though confused by your summons, my expertise lies in evolutionary biology, not military matters. Chryson gestured to a holographic display showing various vessels from the mysterious fleet. "Look at these ships, Doctor. What do you see?" Zenthara studied the images, her scientific curiosity overcoming her discomfort. They appear heterogeneous, different designs, different purposes. Some appear to be cargo vessels, others possibly mining craft. This one resembles a passenger liner. They've all been modified, though additional structures attached to the hulls, some kind of energy emitters. Weapons, perhaps. Precisely, Creason clicked. These are not purpose-built warships. They are civilian vessels converted for military use. My analysts are baffled. No established spacefaring civilization would approach a potential enemy with such an ill-prepared fleet. Zenthara's antenna twitched in thought. Unless they had no choice. Perhaps they are refugees, or rebels fleeing some internal conflict? That was my initial assessment, Creason admitted, but observe their movements. The display shifted to show the fleet's formation adjusting with precise coordination as it maintained position just outside Zaharian-controlled space. Perfect synchronization across more than 200 vessels. That suggests military discipline and advanced command and control systems. Yet they claim to be peaceful colonists from a world called Earth, which exists in no imperial database. Zenthara's compound eyes widened slightly. Earth? That's interesting. Cryson's attention sharpened. You recognize the name? Not directly, Admiral. But in my studies of evolutionary theory, there are ancient texts that mention a theoretical model for life-bearing worlds. The scholars of the early Empire period sometimes referred to the archetypal terrestrial world as Earth from an old root word meaning soil or ground. It's a curiously primitive designation. Creason considered this. Could it be coincidence? Possibly. Or it could suggest these beings evolved on a world similar to the theoretical model, a primarily land-based planet rather than the oceanic or gaseous worlds more common in our experience. The Admiral turned back to the display. They call themselves humans. Does that term hold any significance? Zenthara shook her head. Not that I recall, Admiral. May I ask why you've consulted me specifically? Surely the Military Intelligence Division has xenoanthropologists better suited to this analysis. Cryson's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Doctor, I've read your treatise on adaptive evolutionary responses in primitive species. Your conclusion that the most dangerous organisms are not those with inherent strength, but those with the greatest capacity for rapid adaptation, struck me as particularly relevant to our current situation. He manipulated the controls, and the display showed close-up images of what appeared to be the modifications made to the alien vessels. Look here. These weapon mounts, they've been grafted onto hulls never designed for combat. These shield projectors improvised from what appear to be mining equipment. Every vessel shows signs of hasty but ingenious modification. Zenthara studied the images with growing fascination. Remarkable. They've repurposed industrial equipment for military applications. The engineering principles are crude but effective. This suggests a species with strong problem-solving capabilities and technical aptitude. Dangerous? Creason asked bluntly. Zenthara hesitated. Potentially. A species capable of such rapid technological adaptation could be unpredictable in conflict. Their solutions might not follow our established military doctrine, making their responses difficult to anticipate. Creason nodded slowly. My assessment as well, which is why I've requested that the Grand Council authorize me to attempt diplomatic contact before committing to military action. These humans may be more valuable as potential allies than as conquered subjects. Zenthara's surprise must have shown, for the Admiral continued with a hint of defensiveness in his clicks. I am a warrior, doctor, but not a mindless one. The Empire has grown stagnant in its millennia of unchallenged dominance. Perhaps these humans, with their adaptive capabilities, might offer something of value beyond mere territory. A progressive view, Admiral, not one I would have expected from the Supreme Commander, which is precisely why I will keep it between us for now. Creason replied. The Grand Council sees only a potential threat to be eliminated. I see possibilities. But I must know more about these humans before I can argue for restraint. Zenthara's scientific mind was already racing with questions. I would need to study their biology, their technology, their social structures. You will have your opportunity, Doctor. Creason interrupted. I've arranged for you to join the diplomatic team that will make first direct contact with their leadership. Your ostensible role will be to assess any biological threats they might pose. Your actual mission is to evaluate their potential value to the Empire alive rather than exterminated. Zenthara felt both excitement and trepidation at the prospect. Field research had never been her specialty, and certainly not under such high-stakes conditions. I'm honored by your trust, Admiral. When do we depart? Immediately. The humans have requested a formal meeting. Against the advice of my generals, I've agreed. Their flagship will rendezvous with the Indomitable in neutral space. We must be prepared. As Zenthara left to gather her equipment, she couldn't help but wonder what these humans would be like. In all her centuries of studying evolutionary biology, she had never encountered a species that had so quickly captured the interest of someone like Admiral Creason. These humans must be extraordinary indeed. Lisa Bennett wiped the sweat from her brow as she crawled through the maintenance shaft of what had once been the luxury cruise liner Pacifica Dawn, now redesignated as the combat support vessel UES Defiance. Around her, a team of engineers worked frantically to complete the conversion of the ship's entertainment laser array, originally designed for spectacular light shows for vacationing passengers, into a defensive point defense system. He reroute the power coupling through the auxiliary entertainment grid. She instructed a young technician who had been a university physics student just months ago. We need to boost the output by at least 300% without melting the emitters. That's pushing way beyond safety tolerances, the technician protested. Safety tolerances are a luxury we left behind on Earth. Bennett replied grimly. Just make sure it fires at least once when we need it. Her comm unit chimed with Murphy's distinctive tone. Bennett, status report, came the captain's voice, tight with tension. We're at 84% combat readiness across the fleet, she reported, ducking to avoid a shower of sparks from an overhead welding operation. The passenger liners have the best conversion rates. Turns out entertainment systems share a lot of components with weapons. The mining vessels are more problematic. Their systems were never designed for the power loads we're asking of them. Will they hold together if we need them? Bennett hesitated only briefly. They'll fire, Captain. I can't guarantee for how long. Let's hope it's long enough. Murphy's voice lowered slightly. The Zaharian flagship is approaching for the diplomatic meeting. I need you back on the Liberty in 1 hour. I'll be there, Bennett promised. Just need to finish the calibration on the Defiance's point defense grid. As the communication ended, Bennett returned to her work with renewed urgency. The fleet's transformation from civilian vessels to a makeshift armada represented the greatest engineering challenge humanity had ever undertaken, and she was at the center of it all. 6 months ago, she had been the chief engineer for a commercial space station orbiting Mars. Now, she was responsible for turning cruise ships, mining vessels, and colony transports into warships capable of facing an alien empire. Pass me that phase inverter, she said to her assistant, forcing confidence into her voice that she didn't entirely feel. The truth which she shared only with Murphy was that their modifications were desperate improvisations at best. Against purpose-built Zaharian warships, they would likely fail quickly. But they didn't need to win a war. They just needed to survive long enough to reach Sanctuary Prime and establish a foothold for humanity's future. As she worked, Bennett reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Earth's accelerating environmental collapse, the desperate scramble to retrofit every space-worthy vessel for the mass evacuation, the heart-wrenching selection process to determine who would leave and who would stay behind on the dying planet. President Carter had called it humanity's greatest challenge since evolving from primates. Bennett thought that was underselling it. In all of Earth's history, no species had faced extinction and responded with such determination to survive. Power couplings secure, her assistant reported, ready for test fire. Bennett checked the readouts on her tablet. Divert power from decks 3 through 7. Residents have been relocated to the central habitat zones anyway. As the system powered up, the entire ship vibrated slightly, a concerning sign, but not unexpected given the jury-rigged nature of their modifications. Firing test pattern Alpha, she announced, pressing the activation sequence. Outside the ship, what had once created dazzling light displays for cruise passengers now emitted precisely targeted energy beams capable of intercepting incoming missiles or fighter craft. Not as powerful as dedicated military systems, but better than nothing. Output at 280% of original specifications. Her assistant reported with a hint of pride. "It's working." Bennett allowed herself a brief smile. "Good work. Now let's get to the next one. We've got 23 more ships that need similar conversions before..." Her comm unit chimed again, this time with Rodriguez's emergency tone. "E. Bennett, abort all non-essential work and return to the Liberty immediately," the intelligence officer said without preamble. "The Zaharians have deployed what looks like their main battle fleet. Over 300 warships, approaching in attack formation." Bennett's blood ran cold. "I thought we were meeting for diplomatic talks." "So did we. Either their leadership changed their minds or the diplomatic ship was a feint. Either way, Murphy wants all key personnel back on the Liberty now. We may need to execute the scatter protocol." "Understood. On my way." As Bennett gathered her tools, she forced down the fear threatening to overwhelm her. The scatter protocol was their last resort option, emergency dispersal of the fleet in all directions. Sacrificing unity for the hope that at least some ships might escape. If they were implementing that contingency, Murphy must believe the diplomatic approach had failed completely. Humanity's last hope was about to face its greatest test. Admiral Chryson stood on the command deck of the Indomitable, watching as the massive Imperial fleet took up battle positions surrounding the human vessels. 327 warships, from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts, all positioned with mathematical precision to prevent any possibility of escape. Yet something troubled him. The human fleet remained in formation, showing no signs of panic despite being completely outmatched and surrounded. Either their command structure had extraordinary discipline, or they knew something he did not. "Status of the diplomatic vessel?" he asked his executive officer. "On course for the rendezvous point, Admiral. The human flagship has dispatched a shuttle to meet it." Chryson clicked thoughtfully. "Maintain combat readiness, but do not initiate hostilities without my direct order." His second-in-command's antennae twitched in mild surprise. The Grand Council's directive was clear. "Admiral, if the humans do not immediately surrender and submit to Imperial authority, we are to eliminate them. And we shall follow those orders," Chryson replied smoothly. "If diplomacy fails, but I would prefer to understand what we're facing before committing to battle." In truth, Creason's caution stemmed from more than mere tactical prudence. The human fleet's composition continued to puzzle his analysts. Long-range scans had detected strange energy signatures throughout their vessels, fluctuating power levels, unconventional radiation patterns, and most concerning, what appeared to be thousands of small craft deploying from the larger ships. "What's the status of those unidentified small craft the humans are deploying?" he asked. The tactical officer consulted his display. "Still uncertain, Admiral. They register on our sensors as combat-capable vessels, but their movement patterns are unusual. They appear to be forming a defensive screen around the main fleet." Creason's instincts tingled with warning. Something about this situation defied standard military analysis. Send a wing of interceptors to investigate those small craft. Passive scans only. I want information, not confrontation. Yet, as his orders were relayed, Creason turned his attention to the diplomatic shuttle approaching the rendezvous point. There, at least, some answers might be forthcoming. "Saltuats." Captain Murphy sat rigidly in the diplomatic shuttle's passenger compartment, mentally reviewing the briefing prepared by his advisors. Beside him, Dr. Neha Patel, Earth's foremost xenolinguist, studied her notes with intense concentration. "Remember," she said without looking up, "the Zaharian communication style values precision and hierarchy. Address the senior officer directly, acknowledge their status, then state your purpose. Ambiguity will be interpreted as deception." Murphy nodded, adjusting the collar of his hastily designed dress uniform, a necessary fabrication to project authority in this first official meeting. "Any last-minute intelligence from Rodriguez?" Patel asked. "The Zaharian fleet has surrounded us," Murphy replied grimly. "Over 300 warships. If this diplomatic approach fails, we'll have to execute the scatter protocol immediately." Patel's dark eyes met his, reflecting the gravity of their situation. "Then we must not fail, Captain. Humanity's future depends on it." The shuttle pilot's voice came through the intercom. "Approaching the rendezvous point. Captain, Zaharian diplomatic vessel is waiting." Murphy took a deep breath. "Proceed with docking procedures." Minutes later, he stood at the airlock, Patel at his side, as the mechanism cycled open to reveal their Zaharian counterparts. Murphy had seen images of Zaharians from long-range observations, but nothing prepared him for the reality. Standing nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent exoskeletons and compound eyes that seemed to capture every detail simultaneously, they were imposing figures. The lead Zaharian wore what appeared to be an ornate military uniform, golden striations marking his carapace in intricate patterns. "I am Admiral Creason, Supreme Commander of the Imperial Zaharian Fleet," the alien announced, his words translated through a device at his throat. "You stand before the might of an empire that has endured for 15,000 years. Murphy straightened to his full height, though he still stood a head shorter than the Zaharian commander. "Admiral Creason, I am Captain Jake Murphy of the United Earthship Liberty, representing the United Earth government and all of humanity. This is Dr. Neha Patel, our chief diplomatic advisor." The Admiral's compound eyes seemed to study them with clinical detachment. "Captain Murphy, your presence in Imperial space constitutes a potential act of war. Your fleet's configuration suggests military intent, yet you claim peaceful purposes. Explain this discrepancy immediately." Murphy had anticipated this question. "Admiral, appearances can be deceiving. Our fleet consists primarily of civilian vessels, passenger liners, mining ships, colony transports retrofitted for self-defense during our journey. We are not a military expedition, but a migration of necessity." A smaller Zaharian stepped forward, her exoskeleton a lighter shade with hints of blue. "A migration?" she asked. her translated voice carrying a different intonation than the Admiral's. From where? And why? Murphy glanced at Patel, who nodded slightly. They had agreed to be forthright about their circumstances. Earth, our homeworld, is dying, Murphy stated plainly. Environmental collapse has rendered it increasingly uninhabitable. What you see is not an invasion force, but humanity's attempt to survive, to find a new home before our species faces extinction. The female Zaharian's antennae twitched rapidly. Fascinating. I am Dr. Zinthara, xenobiologist. You claim your entire species is aboard these vessels? Not our entire species, Murphy clarified, a flash of guilt crossing his features. Earth still holds billions of our people. These ships carry approximately 12 million humans, those we could evacuate with our limited resources. Admiral Chryson's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound Murphy couldn't interpret. 12 million, the Admiral repeated. Our scans indicate a fleet capable of transporting hundreds of millions. Murphy exchanged a quick glance with Patel. The Zaharians had clearly detected their drone swarm and misinterpreted its purpose. Our vessels are efficiently designed, Murphy replied carefully. But I assure you we seek only safe passage through your territory to reach our destination. A habitable world we've designated Sanctuary Prime. And where is this world? Chryson demanded. Approximately 40 light-years beyond the far border of what we understand to be Imperial space, in a system you designate as XB7291 according to our astronomical correlations. The Admiral conferred briefly with an aide, their natural language a series of clicks and whistles too rapid for the translators to process. That system lies within unclaimed space, Chryson finally acknowledged. However, your approach through the heart of the Empire is unacceptable. Why not circumnavigate Imperial territory? Time, Murphy answered simply. Our vessels were not designed for extended deep space travel. Supplies are limited, life support systems strained. Taking the direct route through Imperial space would save nearly 2 years of travel time, years we cannot spare. Dr. Zinthara stepped closer, her scientific curiosity evident. If I may, Admiral Captain Murphy, you mentioned environmental collapse. What caused this catastrophe on your world? Murphy's expression darkened. Our own actions, Doctor. Centuries of industrial development without regard for ecological consequences. Climate destabilization, resource depletion, pollution of air and water. By the time we fully understood the damage we had done, it was too late to reverse the collapse, only to escape it. The xenobiologist's antennae quivered with what might have been excitement or concern. A self-induced extinction event, and your response was technological adaptation rather than ecological restoration? We attempted restoration, Murphy replied defensively. For generations, but the systems had passed critical thresholds. The best we could do was buy time for the exodus. Admiral Chryson interrupted what was becoming a scientific discussion. Regardless of your circumstances, Captain, the fact remains that your fleet entered Imperial space without authorization, carrying weapons. The Grand Council has ordered that you either submit to Imperial authority, placing yourselves under our direct control, or be destroyed. Those are your options. Murphy felt a cold determination settle over him. This was the moment he had prepared for, the moment when humanity's future would be decided. Admiral, with respect, neither option is acceptable to us. We cannot surrender the autonomy of our species, nor can we turn back. Perhaps there is a third alternative, a limited transit agreement that would allow us passage while providing the Empire with guarantees of our peaceful intentions. Chryson's compound eyes seemed to harden. The Empire does not negotiate with potential threats. Captain, you will submit, or you will be eliminated. The choice is yours. Murphy straightened his shoulders. Then I request time to consult with my government. This decision affects all of humanity. The Admiral studied him for a long moment before responding. You have 6 hours, Captain Murphy, not 1 minute more. As Murphy and Patel returned to their shuttle, both knew that the countdown to humanity's greatest crisis had begun. Dr. Zenthara hurried to keep pace with Admiral Chryson as they returned to the Indomitable's command center. Admiral, I must protest the ultimatum, she said, her scientific detachment giving way to unexpected concern. These humans represent a unique opportunity for study. Their adaptive capabilities alone could provide valuable insights for the Empire. Chryson's mandibles clicked in irritation. My hands are bound by the Grand Council's directive, Doctor. Though I share some of your curiosity, my duty is clear. But to eliminate an entire species, one that appears to have remarkable technological ingenuity despite their primitive origins? The Admiral paused, turning to face her fully. You found them impressive? Zenthara's antenna twitched with excitement. Extraordinarily so. Consider what they've accomplished, converting civilian vessels into a coordinated fleet, developing defensive capabilities from industrial equipment, sustaining millions of their kind in space for what must have been an extended journey. All this from a species facing extinction. The adaptive pressures must have driven remarkable innovation. Chryson resumed walking, his pace more measured now. I noted similar indicators. Their retrofitted vessels show considerable ingenuity, if crude implementation. And their apparent discipline in the face of overwhelming odds suggests either admirable courage or foolish desperation. They entered the command center, where Chryson's senior officers awaited. The status report, the Admiral demanded. The human fleet maintains its position, Admiral, the tactical officer reported. However, we're detecting unusual energy fluctuations throughout their formation. They appear to be reconfiguring their systems. Weapons? Uncertain. The energy signatures don't match any known weapons profiles. And those small craft they deployed, our interceptors report they appear to be unmanned drones, broadcasting contradictory sensor readings. Chryson's compound eyes narrowed. Deception technology. They're attempting to confuse our sensors about their true capabilities and numbers. Dr. Zenthara couldn't contain her fascination. Remarkable. A technological solution to compensate for numerical inferiority. These humans are proving my adaptive theory correct with every action. The Admiral silenced her with a gesture, his tactical mind processing this new information. They know they cannot defeat us in direct combat, he mused aloud. So they attempt to create uncertainty to make us hesitate or overestimate their strength. A logical strategy for a weaker opponent, his executive officer observed. Indeed, but ultimately futile. Chryson turned to his communications officer. Prepare a channel to the Grand Council. I will update them on the situation and request final authorization for military action once the humans' response deadline expires. As the officers dispersed to their duties, Zenthara approached Chryson privately. Admiral, before you commit to destruction, consider one possibility. What if these humans are more valuable as potential allies than as conquered subjects or eliminated threats? Chryson's mandibles clicked in what might have been thoughtful consideration. The Empire does not make allies, Doctor. It conquers or it destroys. Perhaps that policy deserves reconsideration in this unique case. Zenthara pressed. A species with such adaptive capabilities, such technological ingenuity under pressure, they could bring fresh perspectives to an empire that has, forgive my boldness, grown somewhat stagnant in its 15 millennia of dominance. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. You speak dangerous words, Doctor. Some might consider them treasonous. I speak as a scientist, she replied, unintimidated. The greatest discoveries often come from unexpected sources. These humans, facing extinction, have demonstrated remarkable resilience and innovation. Imagine what they might accomplish if their ingenuity were directed toward the Empire's benefit rather than merely their own survival. Before Chryson could respond, the tactical officer interrupted with urgency in his clicks. "Admiral, the human fleet, they're broadcasting some kind of transmission. It's being directed not just to us, but to the entire Imperial communication network." Chryson's posture stiffened with alarm. "Block it!" "We cannot, sir. They're using our own communication relays, somehow accessing frequencies reserved for Imperial priority transmissions." "Put it on screen," Chryson ordered, his voice tight with controlled anger. The main display activated, showing the face of Captain Murphy. Behind him stood what appeared to be other human leaders, a diverse group that presumably represented their command structure. "O people of the Zaharian Empire," Murphy began, his voice translated into the Imperial Standard Language. "I am Captain Jake Murphy of Earth. I speak to you not as an enemy, but as a representative of a species fighting for its survival." The transmission continued, showing images of Earth's once beautiful blue-green world now ravaged by environmental devastation. Storms of unprecedented magnitude, vast areas rendered uninhabitable, billions struggling to survive. "This is our home world," Murphy's voice continued over the images. "For centuries, we exploited its resources without understanding the consequences. By the time we recognized our mistake, it was too late to save our planet, only to save a fraction of our people." The images shifted to show the human fleet not as it appeared now, but during its construction in orbit around their dying world, the massive engineering effort, the desperate race against time, the heart-wrenching selection process to determine who would leave and who would stay behind. What you see approaching your borders is not an invasion force. It is humanity's last hope, 12 million souls seeking only a new beginning on a world beyond your territories. We ask not for your lands or resources, but merely safe passage. The display showed the route the human fleet proposed to take through Imperial space, a narrow corridor that would minimize their presence while allowing them to reach their destination. "We understand your caution. We accept your concerns. We are prepared to offer guarantees of our peaceful intentions, including limited Imperial oversight of our transit and technology exchanges that might benefit both our peoples." The final image showed what appeared to be human children, looking up at the camera with expressions of both fear and hope. "This is who you would destroy if you choose war over peace. Not warriors or conquerors, but families seeking only survival. I ask you, people of the Zaharian Empire, is your security so fragile, your power so uncertain, that you must exterminate refugees to maintain it? Or is your civilization great enough to show compassion without fear?" The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Admiral Chryson was the first to recover, his mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. "A clever tactic," he said finally. "They appeal directly to the Imperial population, attempting to create popular pressure against military action." "Will it work?" Dr. Zinthera asked quietly. Chryson's compound eyes darkened. "The Empire does not govern by popular sentiment, Doctor. The Grand Council alone determines our response to threats." Yet even as he spoke, his communication officer was receiving incoming transmissions. "Admiral, we're getting queries from multiple planetary governors and system administrators throughout the Empire. The human broadcast reached everywhere. The public is discussing it actively." "Ignore them," Chryson ordered. "Our orders come from the Grand Council alone." As if summoned by his words, the priority communication channel activated, displaying the Grand Counselor herself. "Admiral Chryson," she began without preamble, her ancient voice carrying unmistakable displeasure. "We have witnessed the humans' transmission. This unprecedented breach of Imperial communication security represents a direct challenge to our authority. I agree, Exalted One, Crayson replied, bowing slightly. I await your orders to commence military operations once their response deadline expires. The Grand Counselor was silent for a moment, her compound eyes unreadable. The situation has become complicated, Admiral. The humans' appeal has generated unexpected discussion among the planetary populations. Several influential guildmasters have petitioned for consideration of their proposal. Cryson's antennae stiffened in surprise. The guilds rarely involve themselves in military matters. The Council remains committed to Imperial security. The Grand Counselor continued. However, we must also consider broader implications. The destruction of an entire species, even one as presumptuous as these humans, would have significant diplomatic repercussions with our tributary civilizations. What are your orders, Exalted One? Cryson asked, sensing a shift in the political winds. Yet you will extend the humans' deadline by 12 hours. During this time, you will conduct a thorough assessment of their true capabilities and intentions. Dr. Zenthara will lead a scientific delegation to their command vessel to evaluate their biological and technological status. The Grand Counselor's tone hardened. But make no mistake, Admiral. If these humans pose any genuine threat to Imperial security, they will be eliminated without hesitation. The Empire has not survived 15 millennia by showing weakness to potential adversaries. As the communication ended, Creyson turned to find Dr. Zenthara barely containing her excitement. It appears you will have your opportunity to study these humans more closely. Doctor, he said dryly, and perhaps you will have your opportunity to consider alternatives to destruction, she replied. I shall prepare my team immediately. As she hurried away, Creyson returned his gaze to the tactical display showing the human fleet surrounded by Imperial warships. Something about Murphy's broadcast troubled him deeply, not its content, which was predictably manipulative, but the fact that humans had managed to access the Empire's secure communication network at all. Either Imperial security had vulnerabilities he was unaware of, or these humans possessed technological capabilities far beyond what their crude vessels suggested. Either possibility was deeply concerning. On the bridge of the UES Liberty, Captain Murphy waited in tense silence as the senior staff assessed the impact of their broadcast. Did it work? He finally asked, looking to Rodriguez for analysis. The intelligence officer studied her displays, which showed communication traffic throughout the Zaharian fleet. Hard to say definitively, she replied. But there's been a significant increase in internal communications within their command structure, and our monitoring systems detected widespread retransmission of our broadcast across their civilization's communication networks. President Carter's face appeared on the main screen, her expression cautiously optimistic. Captain, our analysts concur. The broadcast appears to have generated considerable discussion among the Zaharian population. Whether that translates to a policy shift remains to be seen. Murphy nodded, allowing himself a moment of hope. The broadcast had been a calculated risk of seeing the communication access codes that Rodriguez's team had painstakingly decrypted during their long approach to Zaharian space. They had only one chance to use them before the Zaharians changed their security protocols. The real question, Bennett interjected, is whether it bought us enough time. The weapons conversions are progressing, but we're still not ready for a full-scale confrontation. Murphy was about to respond when Rodriguez straightened suddenly at her console. Incoming transmission from the Zaharian flagship, she announced. Text only. On screen, Murphy ordered. The message was brief. Deadline extended 12 hours. Scientific delegation to board Liberty for assessment. Prepare for arrival. A collective exhalation of relief rippled through the bridge. It worked, Patel said, her voice tinged with wonder. They're actually considering our proposal. Murphy wasn't so sure. Or they're buying time to complete their own preparations. Either way, we've gained 12 hours. Let's make the most of them. He turned to Bennett. Accelerate the weapons conversions. Priority to the outer ring vessels. They'll take the first hit if things go wrong. And the scientific delegation? Rodriguez asked. We'll receive them as planned. Murphy decided. Dr. Patel, prepare your team. This may be our best opportunity to establish genuine communication. As his officers dispersed to their tasks, Murphy remained on the bridge, staring at the massive Zaharian fleet surrounding them. 12 hours might not seem like much, but in their desperate situation, it represented something precious. Hope. Dr. Zinthara could barely contain her scientific excitement as the Imperial shuttle approached the human flagship. Despite the potentially hostile circumstances, the opportunity to study an entirely unknown species was the culmination of her centuries-long career. The shuttle docked with a slight shudder, the connection systems adapting to the unfamiliar human technology. Zinthara led her team of 6 specialists experts in various scientific disciplines from xenobiology to technological assessment into the airlock chamber. As the inner doors opened, she was greeted by a delegation of humans led by Captain Murphy and a female who had not been present at the previous meeting. Dr. Zinthara, Murphy acknowledged with a respectful nod. Welcome aboard the Liberty. This is Dr. Helen Singh, our Chief Medical Officer, who will assist with your scientific inquiries. Zinthara's translator processed the words smoothly, though she noted subtle variations in the human speech patterns compared to their earlier encounter. Captain Murphy, I appreciate your cooperation, she replied. My team has been authorized to conduct a comprehensive assessment of your species and technology. The results will inform the Empire's decision regarding your request for passage. Murphy gestured toward a corridor. We understand. We've prepared facilities for your work and will provide access to representative areas of our vessel. Please follow me. As they moved through the ship, Zinthara's compound eyes absorbed every detail. The vessel's interior architecture was fascinatingly functional, clearly once designed for luxury but now efficiently repurposed for survival. Compartments that might once have housed entertainment facilities now contained hydroponic gardens. What appeared to have been a grand dining hall had been converted into a manufacturing center. Most intriguing were the humans themselves. They varied considerably in physical appearance, different skin pigmentations, heights, and morphological features, yet clearly all the same species. They moved with purpose, their body language conveying determination despite what must be extraordinary stress. Your ship was not originally a military vessel, Zinthara observed as they walked. Are you correct? Murphy confirmed. The Liberty was Earth's largest passenger liner vessel for recreational travel. When the Exodus began, we converted it to serve as our command ship. Fascinating. Such extensive repurposing suggests remarkable adaptive capabilities. Murphy's expression tightened slightly. Necessity is a powerful motivator, Doctor. They arrived at what had been designated as the scientific team's work area. A large compartment equipped with various human diagnostic equipment and adapted to accommodate Zaharian physiological needs. Dr. Singh will coordinate with your team, Murphy explained. We've prepared biological samples, technical specifications, and cultural information as requested. I'll leave you to your work. As Murphy departed, Zinthara turned to the human doctor, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic caution. Dr. Singh, I must confess I find your species' situation extraordinary. To convert an entire civilization's infrastructure for space travel in response to environmental collapse, The adaptive pressures must have been immense. The human female's expression reflected a complex mixture of pride and sorrow. It was transformative, she acknowledged. For centuries, humanity was divided competing nations, ideologies, economic systems. The realization that Earth was becoming uninhabitable forced a unification we had never achieved before. Every resource, every mind, every technology was directed toward a single goal: survival. And these modifications to your vessels? Zenthara gestured to what was clearly a repurposed medical scanner, now linked to what appeared to be defensive systems. Improvisation, Singh replied simply. We had no time to design purpose-built systems. We used what we had, adapted it for what we needed. Zenthara's research team had already dispersed throughout the work area, examining the provided biological samples and technical specifications with professional curiosity. If I may ask a direct question, Zenthara ventured. Why did your species not detect the environmental collapse earlier? Surely the warning signs must have been present before the situation became irreversible. Singh's expression darkened. They were. For over 2 centuries, our scientists warned of the consequences of our industrial activities. But our political and economic systems were resistant to fundamental change. By the time the collapse accelerated beyond hiding, it was too late for anything but evacuation. One of Zenthara's junior researchers approached with a data tablet. Doctor, preliminary analysis of their biological structure is complete. They are carbon-based, oxygen-breathing organisms with remarkable similarities to theoretical models of convergent evolution. Their cellular structure suggests significant adaptation to radiation exposure, potentially a recent development. Singh nodded. A necessary modification. Our exodus path took us through regions of space with higher radiation levels than our natural physiology could withstand. We implemented a genetic modification program before departure. Zenthara's antenna twitched in surprise. You modified your own genetic structure within a single generation? We had no choice, Singh replied matter-of-factly. The alternative was extinction. The casual reference to such profound self-modification stunned Zenthara. In Zaharian society, genetic engineering was approached with extreme caution, typically implemented over dozens of generations with extensive testing at each stage. And there were no religious or philosophical objections to such fundamental alteration of your species, she asked. Singh's expression suggested the question seemed almost naive. Dr. Zenthara, when survival is at stake, philosophical purity becomes a luxury. Yes, there were objections. There were protests, resistance movements, even violence. But in the end, adaptation prevailed over ideology. Another researcher approached. This one specialized in technological assessment. A doctor. Their propulsion systems are unusual. They appear to have modified standard fusion drives with some form of quantum field technology that significantly enhances efficiency. The engineering is crude but remarkably effective. Zenthara processed this information with growing fascination. Every report from her team confirmed her initial assessment. These humans possessed extraordinary adaptive capabilities. Their technology was not elegant or refined by imperial standards, but it was innovative and pragmatic. Dr. Singh, she said finally, I must conduct a thorough assessment, but my preliminary observation is that your species represents a unique evolutionary approach prioritizing adaptation and problem-solving over specialization and refinement. In many ways, you are the opposite of Zaharian development patterns. Singh raised an eyebrow. Is that good or bad for our prospects? Zenthara considered the question carefully. It means you are unpredictable. The Empire values stability and consistency. Your demonstrated capacity for rapid change under pressure could be perceived as either an asset or a threat. We don't seek to threaten anyone, Singh emphasized. We only want to survive. Perhaps, Zenthara acknowledged. But species that excel at adaptation rarely remain static in their ambitions. Today, survival. Tomorrow, who can say? As her team continued their assessment, Zenthara found herself increasingly convinced that these humans represented something the Empire had not encountered in millennia. A genuinely novel approach to civilization. Their desperate circumstances had forced innovations that more stable societies might never have attempted. The question remained, would the Empire recognize the potential value in such difference? Or would it react as it had for thousands of years, eliminating what it could not control? Admiral Chryson paced the command deck of the Indomitable, his exoskeleton emitting the subtle creaking sound that his officers recognized as a sign of deep agitation. 6 hours had passed since Dr. Zenthara's team had boarded the human vessel, and still no report. Status of the human fleet, he demanded. Maintaining position. Admiral, the tactical officer reported. However, we continue to detect unusual energy fluctuations throughout their formation. Our analysis suggests they may be reconfiguring their systems. Weapons preparations? Possible, though the signatures don't match any known weapons profiles. Chryson clicked his mandibles in frustration. The uncertainty was becoming intolerable. Military doctrine demanded clear assessment of enemy capabilities before engagement. Yet these humans defied standard analysis. And the drone swarm they deployed? He's still in position, sir. Over 8,000 units, creating a defensive screen around their main vessels. Our probes cannot penetrate their electronic countermeasures to determine their true capabilities. The communications officer interrupted. Admiral, incoming transmission from Dr. Zenthara. Priority channel. Finally, Chryson muttered. On screen. Zenthara's image appeared, her scientific detachment noticeably affected by what appeared to be excitement. Admiral, our preliminary assessment is complete, she began without preamble. These humans are remarkable. Their biological adaptability exceeds anything in our xenobiological database. They've implemented genetic modifications within a single generation that would take Zaharian science centuries to perfect. Chryson cut through her scientific enthusiasm. Are they a threat, Doctor? Zenthara hesitated. Not in conventional military terms. Their vessels, while ingeniously modified, cannot match Imperial warships in direct combat. However, their adaptive capabilities are unprecedented. They've converted civilian technology for military applications with extraordinary creativity. Their propulsion systems incorporate quantum field manipulations that our engineers considered theoretical. Most concerning, they've developed a form of distributed intelligence network that allows their vessels to function as a coordinated entity despite limited resources. Chryson processed this information with growing unease. You're suggesting they compensate for technological inferiority with innovation? Precisely, Admiral. And their psychological profile suggests a species conditioned by their circumstances to take extraordinary risks when survival is at stake. They know they cannot defeat us conventionally, but they may have unconventional strategies prepared. The Admiral's compound eyes darkened. Such as unknown. But I would caution against assuming their apparent weakness means they are without options. Zenthara's antennae twitched with what might have been admiration. They survived the collapse of their homeworld through adaptation and innovation. I would not underestimate their capacity to surprise us. Chryson turned away from the screen, considering the implications. The Grand Council expected a definitive recommendation within hours. The Empire's standard response to potential threats was elimination, a policy that had preserved Imperial security for millennia. Yet something about these humans suggested that the standard approach might be insufficient. "Your formal recommendation, Doctor?" he asked finally. Xanthara straightened, her scientific demeanor giving way to unexpected advocacy. "I recommend accepting their proposal for supervised transit. Admiral, these humans possess knowledge and adaptive capabilities that could benefit the Empire. Destroying them would eliminate a potential resource. Moreover, their demonstrated ingenuity suggests that even if we attack, some might survive, and a species this adaptable might eventually return as a more serious threat." Crayson clicked thoughtfully. "You suggest pragmatism over security. I suggest that in this unique case, pragmatism is security." Xanthara countered, "Better to incorporate their strengths than to create an enemy that has nothing to lose." Before Crayson could respond, the tactical officer interrupted with unmistakable alarm. "Admiral, multiple energy spikes throughout the human fleet. They're launching something." Crayson whirled toward the tactical display. "Weapons?" "Negative, sir. They appear to be communication devices, thousands of them directed toward Imperial population centers." The communications officer confirmed this assessment seconds later. "Admiral, we're detecting mass information packets being transmitted throughout the Empire. The humans are broadcasting evidence." "Evidence of what?" Crayson demanded. "Their homeworld's destruction. Scientific data confirming their environmental collapse. Technical specifications of their fleet. Humanitarian appeals." The officer's antennae drooped slightly. "Sir, they're making their case directly to our population, bypassing the Grand Council entirely." Cryson's mandibles clicked rapidly in alarm. This was unprecedented. No species had ever attempted to circumvent Imperial authority by appealing directly to the population. "He blocked the transmissions." "We cannot, sir. They're using some form of quantum entanglement communication that bypasses our standard jammers. And they're replicating too rapidly. As soon as we block one channel, they open 3 more. The Admiral felt the situation slipping from his control. The Empire maintained order partly through information management, controlling what the general population knew about external threats and policy decisions. These humans had somehow identified and exploited that vulnerability. His executive officer approached, mandibles tight with concern. "Admiral, the Grand Council is demanding an immediate status report. They're receiving thousands of citizen inquiries about the human transmissions." Chryson straightened his posture, his military discipline reasserting itself amidst the chaos. "Tell the Council I will deliver my assessment personally. Prepare my shuttle for immediate departure to the core world." He turned to the main screen where Xanthara still waited. "Doctor, you will accompany me. The Council will require your scientific evaluation." As the connection ended, Chryson returned his gaze to the tactical display showing the human fleet surrounded by Imperial warships. What had seemed a simple military operation was transforming into something far more complex, a challenge not just to Imperial security but to the very foundations of Imperial governance. These humans were proving dangerously unpredictable indeed. Captain Murphy stood in the Liberty's communications center, watching as Lisa Bennett's engineering team monitored the quantum transmission network. Thousands of data packets were streaming out into Zaharian space, carrying humanity's message to every corner of the Empire. "Status?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. 93% saturation of major population centers." Rodriguez reported from her console. "The Zaharians are attempting to block the transmissions, but our quantum relay system is working exactly as designed. They can't stop the signal." Murphy nodded grimly. This was their most desperate gambita direct appeal to the Zaharian population, bypassing the military and political leadership entirely. The strategy had emerged from Dr. Patel's cultural analysis, which suggested that while the Zaharian government was hierarchical and militaristic, their society contained diverse perspectives that might be more receptive to humanity's plight. "What about the content analysis?" he asked. President Carter, joining via secure link from her ship, provided the answer. "Our cultural AI models suggest the environmental collapse narrative is resonating most strongly. Zaharian communication patterns show significant discussion of planetary stewardship and species responsibility. That tracks with what Dr. Zenthara revealed during her assessment." Patel added, "The Zaharians have a deeply ingrained cultural reverence for stability and long-term planning. Our failure to preserve Earth strikes them as both tragic and cautionary." Murphy considered this information carefully. "So we've gotten their attention. The question is, will it change their decision?" Bennett looked up from her engineering console. "Captain, we're detecting movement from the Zaharian flagship. A shuttle has departed, heading toward what appears to be a long-range transport vessel." "A destination?" Murphy asked. Rodriguez consulted her intelligence feeds. "Based on trajectory and communication patterns, likely their capital world. Admiral Chryson appears to be personally reporting to their leadership." Murphy felt a surge of cautious optimism. They wouldn't send their fleet commander for a routine execution order. There must be debate within their leadership. Or they're simply confirming the order at the highest level. Carter cautioned. "We shouldn't assume this works in our favor." Murphy nodded, acknowledging the sobering possibility. "Agreed, Bennett. What's our combat readiness status?" The engineer's expression was grim but determined. 92% of planned conversions complete. The passenger liners have full defensive capabilities now. Mining vessels are at about 80%. Their systems were harder to retrofit. If it comes to a fight." She didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew that despite their preparations, humanity's improvised fleet could not win a conventional battle against the Zaharian Armada. "What about the Sanctuary Protocol?" Carter asked quietly. Murphy's jaw tightened. The Sanctuary Protocol was their absolute last resort, a desperate plan to ensure at least some portion of humanity would survive even if the main fleet was destroyed. "E5 ships are prepared," he confirmed. "Loaded with genetic samples, cultural archives, and enough volunteers to establish a minimal colony. If the worst happens, they'll attempt to break through using the rest of us as cover." A heavy silence fell over the communication center. The Sanctuary Protocol represented both hope and heartbreak, the possibility that humanity might continue, but only as a tiny fragment of what they had once been. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Carter said finally. "Our appeal seems to be generating discussion throughout the Empire. Perhaps their leadership will recognize that destroying a refugee population would damage their standing among their own people." Murphy wanted to share her optimism, but years as a commercial captain had taught him to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. "We continue as planned," he decided. "Maximum transmission of our message to their population, accelerate combat preparations, and maintain the diplomatic channel. We need to appear open to negotiation regardless of our actual expectations." As his officers acknowledged the orders, Murphy gazed at the main display showing the massive Zaharian fleet surrounding them. In the 15 hours since their initial contact, they had gone from anonymous refugees to the center of what appeared to be an empire-wide debate. Whether that debate would conclude with humanity's salvation or destruction remained to be seen. The Grand Council chamber hummed with tension as Admiral Chryson and Dr. Zenthara presented their findings. All 12 Grand Councilors were physically present, a rare occurrence that underscored the severity of the situation. The human transmissions have reached every major population center in the Empire, Creason reported, his tone carefully neutral. Their appeal has generated unprecedented public discourse about Imperial First Contact protocols and refugee policies. The Grand Counselor of Zaharia Prime leaned forward, her ancient eyes unreadable. Admiral, the policy of the Empire has remained consistent for 15 millennia. Unknown species that demonstrate military capabilities and enter our territory without permission are considered hostile. They are given the opportunity to submit to Imperial authority or face elimination. Why should these humans be treated differently? Before Creason could respond, Dr. Zenthara stepped forward, a breach of protocol that caused a ripple of clicks and whistles among the counselors. Exalted ones, if I may address the scientific implications, she said, bowing deeply to mitigate her procedural violation. These humans represent a unique evolutionary approach that the Empire has not encountered before. Their adaptive capabilities under extreme pressure exceed anything in our xenobiological records. The science counselor's antennae twitched with interest. Explain. Zenthara activated a holographic display showing human genetic structures and technological innovations. In response to their planetary crisis, they implemented genetic modifications within a single generation that would take our science centuries to perfect. They converted civilian vessels for space combat through innovations our engineers considered theoretical. Most remarkably, they developed a form of distributed intelligence network that allows their heterogeneous fleet to function as a coordinated entity. You suggest they have military value? The military counselor asked. I suggest they have adaptative value, Zenthara clarified. The Empire has achieved unparalleled stability through standardization and control. These humans represent the opposite approach: rapid innovation under pressure, distributed decision-making, technological improvisation. There may be contexts in which such capabilities would complement Imperial strengths. Admiral Creason, recognizing the shift in discussion, added his assessment. From a military perspective, their fleet poses no conventional threat to Imperial security. However, their demonstrated capacity for unconventional solutions suggests that complete elimination might be more difficult than anticipated. Some could escape, potentially returning as a more serious threat in the future. The Grand Counselor's compound eyes narrowed slightly. You both appear to be advocating for leniency toward these intruders. This is unexpected from the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet. Creason straightened, his military bearing impeccable. Exalted one, I advocate for strategic pragmatism. The humans' direct appeal to our population has created an unexpected political dimension to this encounter. A full-scale military action against what the public now perceives as refugees could generate internal dissent, something the Empire has not faced in millennia. The economic counselor, silent until now, joined the discussion. There is another consideration. The humans' proposed transit route would take them through the outer territories where our presence is limited. If supervised properly, their passage need not threaten Imperial security. Moreover, they offer technological exchange as compensation innovations that might have economic value. The chamber fell silent as the Grand Counselor considered these perspectives. After what seemed an eternity, she spoke. For 15,000 years, the Empire has maintained order through consistency and strength. Our policies are not altered on the whim of public sentiment or the peculiarities of a single species. Her ancient eyes swept the chamber. However, the Empire has also survived by adapting when necessary. She turned to Admiral Creason. You will return to your fleet with new orders. The humans will be permitted supervised transit through a designated corridor of Imperial space, subject to strict conditions, limited speed, continuous monitoring, and prohibition of any military action. Additionally, they will provide full access to their adaptive technologies as compensation for this accommodation. A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber at this unprecedented decision. "And if they refuse these terms?" Chryson asked. The Grand Counselor's mandibles clicked once, decisively. "Then the original directive stands. They will be eliminated." As the council session concluded, Xanthara approached Chryson in the antechamber, her scientific detachment giving way to visible relief. "A historic decision, Admiral. The first time in recorded history the Empire has accommodated rather than conquered." Chryson's compound eyes reflected a complex mixture of emotions. "Do not overstate the significance, Doctor. This is pragmatic calculation, not philosophical transformation. The Empire remains what it has always been, the dominant power in this galaxy." Xanthara's antenna twitched in what might have been amusement. "Of course, Admiral. Yet even the mightiest river can be changed by a single stone placed in the right position. These humans may be such a stone." As they boarded the shuttle to return to the fleet, Chryson found himself unsettled by her metaphor. The Empire's strength had always derived from its immutability, its constancy across millennia. The accommodation of these humans represented a small but distinct deviation from that pattern. Whether it would prove the wisdom of adaptation or the beginning of decline remained to be seen. Captain Murphy stood on the bridge of the Liberty, facing the holographic image of Admiral Chryson. The Zaharian commander's posture was formal, his translated voice carrying the weight of official pronouncement. "Captain Murphy, the Grand Council has considered your request for transit through Imperial territory. Against traditional protocol, your proposal has been accepted, with conditions." Murphy maintained a neutral expression despite the surge of hope he felt. "We appreciate the Council's consideration. Admiral, what conditions does the Empire require?" Chryson outlined the terms. A specified narrow corridor through Imperial space, continuous monitoring by escort vessels, limitations on speed and communication, and comprehensive sharing of human adaptive technologies. "These terms are non-negotiable," the Admiral concluded. "You will have 6 hours to accept or reject them. If you reject them, the original directive for elimination stands." When the transmission ended, Murphy turned to his senior staff and President Carter, all of whom had observed the exchange. "Thoughts?" he asked simply. President Carter spoke first, her expression cautiously optimistic. "The terms are strict but acceptable. The technology sharing requirement is broad, but nothing that compromises our core security." Bennett nodded in agreement. "From an engineering perspective, sharing our adaptive technologies isn't problematic. Most of our innovations were emergency measures, not long-term proprietary advantages. The restricted corridor adds approximately 17 days to our journey," Rodriguez noted, studying the navigational data. "But that's a small price to pay for safe passage." Dr. Patel, who had been analyzing the linguistic nuances of Chryson's communication, offered her assessment. "There's something significant here beyond the terms themselves. The Empire has deviated from its standard protocol. According to everything we've learned about Zaharian history, they've never before granted passage to a non-subjugated species. This represents an unprecedented accommodation." Murphy considered these perspectives, weighing them against the alternatives. The Empire's terms were restrictive but not punitive. More importantly, they offered what humanity needed most: survival. "We accept," he decided, and prepare a formal response to Admiral Chryson Rodriguez. "Begin calculating the transit path through their designated corridor. Bennett, prepare a comprehensive package of our adaptive technologies for transfer." As his officers acknowledged their orders, Murphy turned to President Carter. "Madam President, with your approval, I'll sign the formal agreement on behalf of humanity. Carter nodded solemnly. You have full authority, Captain. You've brought us this far. I trust you to see us through. Murphy allowed himself a moment to absorb the magnitude of what they had accomplished. After months of desperate flight, the path to humanity's new home was finally clear. Let's not celebrate yet, he cautioned. We still have a long journey ahead, and we'll be under Zaharian scrutiny the entire way. Maintain all protocols and stay alert. This is just the beginning of our relationship with the Empire. 12 hours later, the human fleet began its carefully monitored journey through Zaharian space. Imperial escort vessels flanked the formation, maintaining constant surveillance as the vast procession of retrofitted ships followed the designated corridor. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chryson watched the operation with mixed emotions. The Grand Council's decision still troubled him, not because he disagreed with the outcome, but because it represented a deviation from 15 millennia of consistent policy. They maintain perfect formation, his tactical officer observed. Impressive discipline for civilian vessels. Chryson clicked in acknowledgement. Continue monitoring. Any deviation from the approved corridor is to be reported immediately. Dr. Zenthara, who had been granted permission to observe the transit's initial phase, approached the Admiral. A historic moment, she remarked quietly. The first peaceful passage of an independent species through Imperial space. Chryson's compound eyes shifted toward her. Do not romanticize pragmatism, Doctor. This is merely the most efficient solution to an unusual problem. Perhaps, she replied, her antennae twitching slightly. Yet I cannot help but wonder if this encounter might change the Empire in ways we cannot yet foresee. The Empire does not change, Chryson stated automatically, but even to his own hearing, the words sounded less certain than they once had. Zenthara's scientific mind was already racing ahead to possibilities. I've been granted permission to establish a research exchange with the human scientists. Their approach to adaptive technology could offer insights applicable to Imperial development. You keep me informed of any significant discoveries, Chryson instructed, particularly anything with military implications. As the xenobiologist departed, Chryson returned his attention to the tactical display. The human fleet moved with remarkable coordination for such a disparate collection of vessels. Their drone swarm had been recalled as required by the agreement, revealing their true numbers far fewer than initially estimated, but still an impressive feat of organization. His executive officer approached with a data tablet. Admiral, initial analysis of the human technological package. Their quantum communication system and adaptive propulsion modifications appear particularly valuable. Chryson reviewed the information with professional interest. Have our engineers begin integration studies immediately. If these innovations prove viable, they could enhance our border patrol capabilities significantly. As he issued orders and monitored the transit operation, a thought kept returning to Chryson's mind. These humans, facing extinction, had chosen adaptation over surrender. They had transformed civilian vessels into a coherent fleet, developed improvisational weapons from industrial equipment, and somehow managed to navigate the complexities of imperial politics despite being complete outsiders. Perhaps there was something to learn from such resilience. Something the Empire, for all its power and stability, had forgotten during its millennia of unchallenged dominance. 3 weeks later, Captain Murphy stood on the observation deck of the Liberty, watching as the last of the human fleet cleared Zaharian space. Behind them, the Imperial escort vessels maintained their vigilant formation, but ahead lay open space, and beyond that, Sanctuary Prime. We made it, Lisa Bennett said quietly, joining him at the viewport. Honestly, there were moments I didn't think we would. Murphy nodded, his weathered face showing the strain of the past months. "We're not home yet, but we've cleared the biggest hurdle." President Carter's image appeared on a nearby console. "Captain, the Zaharian admiral is requesting a final communication before their escorts withdraw." "Put him through," Murphy instructed. Admiral Chryson's holographic image materialized, his formal posture somehow less rigid than in previous communications. "Captain Murphy, your fleet has completed the approved transit corridor. You are now entering unclaimed space. Our escort vessels will withdraw as agreed." "Thank you, Admiral," Murphy replied. "The United Earth government acknowledges the Empire's cooperation and reaffirms our commitment to peaceful relations." Chryson's mandibles clicked in what Murphy had come to recognize as thoughtful consideration. "Before we part ways, Captain, I have been authorized to inform you that the Empire will establish a communication relay at the border of your destination system. Should you require assistance in establishing your colony, you may request it through this channel." Murphy's eyebrows rose in surprise. This unexpected offer went beyond their agreement. "That's most generous, Admiral. May I ask what prompted this additional accommodation?" Chryson's compound eyes seemed to study Murphy carefully before responding. "The Empire has survived for 15 millennia by recognizing potential value where it exists. Your species has demonstrated remarkable adaptive capabilities under extreme pressure. Such resilience may prove complementary to Imperial strengths in the future." The Admiral's posture straightened, returning to formal protocol. "Safe journey, Captain Murphy. The Empire will be watching your progress with interest." As the communication ended, Bennett turned to Murphy with a questioning expression. Did the most powerful empire in the galaxy just suggest they might want an ongoing relationship with us? Murphy stroked his beard thoughtfully. "I believe they did. Dr. Patel suggested this might happen. Apparently, our approach to problem solving is fundamentally different from theirs. They value stability and standardization. We've been forced to embrace adaptation and improvisation. Different strengths," Bennett mused. "Together, greater than the sum of their parts." "Potentially," Murphy agreed. "But let's focus on one challenge at a time. We still have a new world to reach and a civilization to rebuild." As the Liberty led the human fleet toward their destination, Murphy reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Earth's environmental collapse had forced humanity to its breaking point, but from that catastrophe had emerged a new kind of strength. The desperate measures that had ensured their survival had also transformed them into something the mighty Zaharian Empire found worthy of accommodation rather than conquest. Perhaps, Murphy thought, that was humanity's greatest gift, the ability to transform disaster into opportunity, to find new paths forward when old ones failed, to adapt and evolve even in the face of extinction. As Sanctuary Prime awaited them in the distance, humanity carried not just the genetic and cultural legacy of Earth, but also the hard-won lessons of their Exodus lessons that might, in time, influence even an empire that had remained unchanged for 15 millennia. 6 months later, Dr. Zenthara stood on a hillside overlooking the primary human settlement on Sanctuary Prime. The colony had grown with remarkable speed, temporary structures giving way to permanent buildings as the humans established their new home. Beside her stood Jake Murphy, no longer wearing a captain's uniform but the practical clothing of a colonial administrator. Their professional relationship had evolved into something approaching friendship during her extended research mission. "Impressive progress," she observed, her translator converting her clicks and whistles into human language. "In half a year, you've established agricultural systems, manufacturing facilities, and educational institutions. Your adaptive capabilities continue to astonish." Murphy smiled, the lines of strain that had marked his face during the Exodus beginning to soften. Necessity remains a powerful motivator, Doctor. We have 12 million people to house and feed, and a civilization to rebuild. They walked together through what the humans had designated as their scientific quarter, where research facilities studied everything from the planet's native ecosystems to advanced technologies salvaged from Earth. The Imperial Science Academy is particularly interested in your atmospheric restoration project. Zenthara noted, your experience with Earth's collapse has given you insights into planetary systems that our scientists have never needed to develop. Murphy nodded. We learned the hard way what happens when you ignore ecological balance. We won't make the same mistake here. They passed a construction site where human engineers worked alongside Zaharian technical advisors, another unexpected development in the evolving relationship between the species. Admiral Chryson sends his regards, Zenthara mentioned. He has been promoted to the Imperial Strategic Council, quite an honor. Your encounter apparently enhanced his standing rather than damaging it as he initially feared. Send him our congratulations, Murphy replied. His decision to advocate for our passage likely saved our species. Zenthara's antennae twitched in what Murphy had come to recognize as amusement. He would say it was merely pragmatic calculation. But between us, I believe he was genuinely impressed by humanity's resilience. It challenged his understanding of strength. They reached the crest of another hill, where they could see the full expanse of the growing colony. In the distance, the remaining ships of the human fleet had been partially dismantled, their components repurposed for planetary infrastructure. A final transformation from vessels of exodus to foundations of a new beginning. The Grand Council has approved my proposal for a permanent research exchange, Zenthara announced. A delegation of human scientists will be invited to the Imperial Core worlds, while Zaharian researchers will continue to study your development here. Murphy's expression reflected cautious optimism. From refugees to research partners in less than a year, an unexpected turn of events. The Empire has begun to recognize that its strength lies not just in stability but also in selective adaptation. Zenthara observed, your species has provided a compelling demonstration of how rapid innovation can address existential challenges. There are contexts in which such approaches might benefit even a civilization as established as ours, as they watch the sunset over humanity's new home. Murphy reflected on the journey that had brought them here. What had begun as a desperate flight from extinction had evolved into something more profound, the beginning of an unexpected relationship between two fundamentally different civilizations. Perhaps that's the real lesson, he said thoughtfully. Not just that humanity can adapt and survive, but that even the most established powers can learn from those they might once have dismissed. Zenthara's compound eyes seemed to gleam in the fading light. Indeed, Captain Murphy. Perhaps the greatest strength lies not in unchanging consistency, but in recognizing when change itself becomes necessary. Below them, the lights of the human settlement began to illuminate the gathering darkness, a constellation of hope on a world that had once been merely a desperate destination, but was now becoming genuinely home. Humanity had survived its greatest crisis not through military might or technological superiority, but through adaptation, innovation, and ultimately, the capacity to inspire change even in a civilization that had remained unaltered for 15,000 years. In the vastness of the galaxy, two species that might have been enemies had instead become partners, each bringing different strengths to challenges neither could optimally address alone. And in that unexpected alliance lay hope not just for humanity's future, but for a new kind of interstellar relationship based not on conquest or submission, but on the recognition that different evolutionary paths might, when brought together, create something greater than either could achieve alone. As darkness fell over Sanctuary Prime, the stars emerged above the same stars that had witnessed humanity's desperate exodus and the Zaharian Empire's unprecedented accommodation. They shone down on a world where the future was being written not in conflict but in cooperation, not in uniformity but in the creative tension between stability and change. A new chapter had begun, not just for humanity but for the ancient empire that had, against all expectations, chosen to help rather than hinder their survival. And in that choice lay the seeds of transformation for both civilizations. To adaptation, Murphy said, raising a container of water in an improvised toast. And to stability, Xanthara replied, mimicking the gesture with her own drinking vessel. Together, stronger than either alone. They concluded in unintentional unison, watching as humanity's new homeworld turned from day to night, carrying the promise of countless days to come.